sit on the pillows.
I like that. Well, when you're short like that, so shoulders.
Right.
We gotta have a little one.
I know, we gotta have a little up.
Everywhere we go.
Yay, yeah. All right, so today, and welcome Gail to Shine, and actually we are in the new studio, and I'm being facetious because we're in our basement bedroom. Because we have a new puppy who's just crazy, so you're gonna hear scratching and whining probably at some point, so we had to lock him out. So Gail and I hooked up again about a year, was it a year ago? We were at a conference, and I had actually forgotten that our boys played football together, and we were having a conversation, and what struck me was we have very similar experiences. So we both have been divorced, 2 kids who are completely opposites, right? I mean, completely. But we also, had or have a child who really struggled, like with mood things, and Gail, you kind of actually specialize in mindfulness and dealing with mood and behavior, and I try to heal and treat people. So it's a very interesting position to be in as a mom. Very interesting. So I don't want to concentrate really on your son's illness, but mainly how you kind of dealt with it. So when he first started struggling kind of with his mood and whatnot, I mean, how did you did you figure it out? Did you see it? Did it blindside you? Like how?
Wow.
What kind of place were you
I
at?
think, well, obviously hindsight, 2020, right? So as I sit here today and I think about that question, I go, gosh, when he was 3, he couldn't get the sock lined up exactly right in the shoe, and I just thought it was some cute, quirky thing. But in the back of my mind, I think I really knew that, that seems a tad bit obsessive. That seems a tad bit compulsive. But
then again, he's 3.
But he's right. He's 3. So I'm like, he's just a picky boy, picky eater, picky boy, la la la. And I didn't think too much of it. And he loved school, and he had friends, and he played sports, and so he was just this really beautiful boy, And then middle school came around, and hormones started to kick in, and in 8th grade, we started noticing just some differences. Just he was more anxious about things. He was more attentive to things, like going out of the door to go to school, and he didn't have his belt on. He went to Franklin. Those of you who have kids at Franklin know.
Gotta have your belt on.
Gotta have your belt on, or it's 5 full, or whatever they call it, lunch detentions. And we were pulling out of the driveway, and he was losing his mind. I do not have my belt on. And I'm like, dude, you have on a hoodie. No, Mom, you don't. And I knew that if I did not pull back in the driveway, let him get out and get his belt.
Right.
He was not going to be okay.
He wasn't going to make it through the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, that was when I first started noticing things like that. This desperate desire to be on time, to have everything done right, to not break any rules. I mean, kind of a reverse type of perfectionism, but then also reverse, because if he couldn't do something well, he would do it all.
Which is interesting, because that's a skill we want our kids to have,
Absolutely.
Right? I want you to do it extremely well. I want you to pay attention to detail. I want you to be on time. So there's that thin line of, is this really a problem, or is this something, is it a characteristic we want him to have?
Is this behavior right? Or is this, I really am so frustrated that I can't do anything, I'm paralyzed, because I can't figure it out, so I'm just going to stay right here stuck and take an F or whatever. And so we started to notice that. Just that some of that anxious behavior in 8th grade, and boy, I'll tell you, when we hit high school, it was all over.
Yeah.
It was like we literally were dealing with someone we didn't even know.
And then, so as a mom, because your daughter, completely different personality and experience, so it was kind of like, wow, this is coming out of left field. So I have to ask you, so when people would approach you or talk to you, I mean, would they be like, so we don't get it, because
all the time.
Sister's fine, they grew up in the same house, is it you?
Right.
Or did you know what I mean? Like,
what did your divorce do to him? And and just and I even have people say, you have another child? Yes, I do. He just doesn't happen to be her. He doesn't happen to be as outgoing and as her, and and that hurt a little bit. And he began to isolate more as he got into high school. Less time with friends, less concern about school, he just started to really withdraw. After it was probably in February of his freshman year. We had some pretty unhappy experiences. The beginning of his freshman year with a teacher who refused to acknowledge him for who he was, and I really believe that started the real downward cycle at that point. And that was hard for me. I'm a teacher and a behavior strategist, and I'm watching other adults not allow him to be who he was. They expected him to be like Cassidy.
So how did you approach that? Because like you said, not only are you a mom trying to be an advocate for your son, but you also, are a fellow teacher. So how do you approach? Because see, I'm tired, Mom. I'm like, don't be messing with
well,
me.
it ended up like that.
But
it didn't start like that.
Right? But then the other part of it is, I have to be somewhat respectful to my colleagues.
Here I am, I'm a teacher. I'm a firm believer in, the fair. Fair is something that happens in August out on the north end of town. Equity in education is important. It's like doctoring.
Right.
Teaching and doctoring are very much similar. You will treat every patient the exact same way, and I can't teach every child in the classroom the same way. But I was dealing with an adult who felt as if my 14-year-old boy should be just like his sister, and he shouldn't need any help, and he should never stare at his feet. So we met, and we had this conversation, and I just kept looking at her, listening to her, and I said, do you know him? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, do you know him? Have you talked to him? Have you attempted to get to know him? And she goes, that is not my job. That is his job. I said, okay. I said, we're going to stop.
Right.
I told her,
right.
I just told her, I said, we're going to agree to disagree. That is not the philosophy of education at this point. Relationship building is on the edge of the adult, not on the kid. So we agreed to disagree, and she refused to acknowledge that he needed more from her, that he needed encouragement from her, that staring at his shoes was his way of dealing with, I don't understand, and I sure as heck I'm not going to raise my hand and embarrass myself in front of all these other peers of mine. He was not going to do it, but she could not let it go.
And the high school experience is really set up probably for 75% of students. There is, a quarter of the students that just don't learn or are socially able to be in that situation.
Right.
So at what point, as a mom, did you get to the point where you're like, okay, wait, something really isn't right here? Am I pushing too much? Am I pushing not enough?
Am I enabling him?
Am I enabling him?
Another piece of it. So that was the big piece of it.
How do you walk that?
So when I figured out, it was at Christmas time of his freshman year, and he had a final to prepare for, and the deal was he could bring in anything he wanted on this 3x5 card. And the kid has the most horrible handwriting, and there was nothing in the instructions that said he couldn't type it or have someone scribe it for him. So we sat for hours at the kitchen table prepping for this exam, and I wrote out for him what he wanted to have on this card.
Much like we all do in our jobs. I type.
I
record something and somebody scribes, so you don't have to.
I scribe for lots of people as a strategist. Tell me what you're hearing, what you're thinking, and I'll scribe it, and then we'll talk about it. Well, he took the test, and she failed him. She said that his preparation wasn't his, and I'm like, how do you fail a formative assessment that you're allowed to prepare for and bring in anything you want? And so we got into this big to-do with the principal and people above the principal, and I stood firm and I said, we're not having this. And then after Christmas, after it had all been resolved, she just continued to push on him. So we took him out of the school. Because other teachers were telling me, he's getting this reputation that's not fair. And I'm like, how is this happening? This isn't even a kid you need to find how to help this kid.
Well, and I remember sometimes I'd walk into the high school and be like, oh, you're Eli's mom.
What are you doing here?
Which was totally different from, oh, you're Rose's mom. How are you?
I was a head coach at this school.
Right. And don't get me wrong.
This is not about
school district. The district. I think every school has, some difficulties and things like that. And we ended up having a wonderful team. Eventually.
In the end, so did we. Once adults who were willing to listen to the conversation and to hear him talk about his experiences, I'll never forget. There was a teacher there who called me, and he was so concerned about him, and he was like, what can I do to help? And he didn't have anything to do with him. but he just, he saw him somehow.
Right.
Maybe it, what am I looking for? Maybe something just resonated with him, like he saw that fear in him, that desire. I don't know what it was, but once we got him where he needed to be, things got better.
Okay.
Right. And the help that he needed, that I was struggling with.
So, and then because you had to be such a different mom for him than you were for Cassidy. So how do you balance that? Am I giving you too much attention? Am I enabling you but telling you you've got to try? How do you do that?
That was probably one of the most difficult times of my life, honestly. Because here I've got this kid who's, she's overachieving, she's doing great, she's making college plans, she's gonna, perform, swim in college, blah, blah, blah. And then I've got this kid who no one has any hope for, except me.
Right.
And I'm divorced and I'm dating, if you will, and that's weird anyway, right? I mean, that's all weird. And I'm trying to manage my career. I'm trying to manage being a head coach of a very successful program. I'm trying to manage being Cassidy's mom. I'm trying to manage being Peyton's mom. And all these other obligations. And I can tell you that at that point in my life, I felt so alone and so pulled in so many directions and so judged, even though that wasn't necessarily what was happening.
That's how you felt.
I felt judged because I felt like I could not possibly keep all these balls in the air. And and then here I am, this person who's also, a long-term recovering alcoholic. And those are all, really sometimes seem like viable options, And so I had a friend who I relied on constantly, who just loved me through the whole thing and would listen and be there for me, and to this day she's still, So I would not recommend isolating yourself, when you're going
and
through
taking
these
care
things.
of yourself.
I did not take as good a care of myself as I traditionally have, and that was because that was the easiest thing to let go of. One more thing to do, right? So I gained weight and I didn't eat well, and I didn't go to meetings and continue to surround myself like I could have, and that's all hindsight now. I would never, do that again. Let's hope I would never do it again, right? But it's hard to not live in your kid's skin when your kids are struggling, and to stay in your own skin and allow them their process, but then just be there for them. And I think that
because we want to fix them.
Right.
Because for me, I'm like, well, I want to fix you. I know how to fix you.
Right.
We need to do this, and that.
And I said things like that so many times. And then the thing I think that struck me so hard when he got so sick and we needed, a much higher level of intervention.
Right.
I was like, holy crap, you were the same way in high school, except I was much more high functioning. I had severe anxiety, but back in the 70s, early 80s, we didn't know what that was. I didn't tell people about it. I thought I was just dying of a brain tumor. I'm like, I'm going to be dead soon. It's not going to matter. I mean, I had no idea what was happening to me, but I also had that excessive anxiety, the compulsions to have my, to be so many feet from the door and doing things like that, and also that perfectionism. But I thrived on it and that validation that I got, whereas he kind of had a different manifestation, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized, holy cow, the reason why I'm struggling with this so much is because it reminds me of my experience, just different manifestations, right? But I know that now.
Right,
I didn't know that until he was, desperately ill, and we were terrified that every day we'd come home and find him dead. My therapist was even preparing me for that. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And she said, because you have no control over what he will do, Gail. And I'm like, you're sick. And she said, no, done this too many times with too many people. And I'm just like, really? And she's like, you have to understand. And so that's the hard part. The balance is just that. That's what we work for all the time, right? Is to get some balance. And I didn't have a lot of it back then. I was literally grabbing at whatever straw was in front of me, playing it, working it, and moving it.
Did you get to a breaking point? I mean, did you get to a point where you became physically ill, or something happened that kind of slapped you to say, wait a minute, I've got to start taking care of myself.
Yeah.
I can't take care of my kids until I take care of myself.
Yeah, and it was interesting that you say that. For somebody who works so hard now on helping adults cultivate self-care in their lives, right? I was the poster child for everything you should not do when your life is completely upside down, right?
Which is why good
Well,
at what you do.
Right. I try, right? I want people to, if I can help somebody not go through as much
Right.
pain as I did, or just have better tools,
Right.
better management tools, during that time. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it was, I had been dating someone for a long time at that point, and I realized that this relationship was unbelievably unhealthy and borderline honestly dangerous for
Right.
me, right?
Right.
Like it was sucking the life out of me, and it was not allowing me to attend to the more important things. And I basically just said one day, you have to go.
Right.
And it was like a watershed moment in my life. And as soon as I rid myself of that toxicity and abuse, because it was emotionally very abusive, it mimicked some of previous patterns,
Right.
that because it's comfortable, so you go to what's comfortable. It was like I would never look back. It's been 8 years since that happened, and my life since then has been nothing but taking good care of myself, taking good care of my family, ensuring that I am doing what's best and right for me, so that everybody else around me.
But as a mom, that is so hard.
Oh my God, it's so easy
we,
to talk about.
I know,
but
but
not easy to do.
we are wired
Yes.
to do everything.
Yes.
And stop at nothing to do everything for everybody around us.
Exactly.
So we are last on the list.
And I was always I mean, I was huge. I was, aside from being pregnant, I was the biggest, most unhealthiest, uncomfortable, full of shame, full of judgment, doubt, self-doubt, but yet all these other things in my life were good. But I, on the inside, I do not know how I held it together. Seriously, I don't know how I didn't end up in some sort of treatment facility at that point. But gratefully, since that piece of my life was over, I was really much more able to see very clearly what was happening to Peyton and to accept it and to stop denying.
And that's
the acceptance
the big
piece.
part.
That was. It was like, Gail, this is what's happening. What are you gonna do?
And you can't
And getting him to accept it too.
And you can't spend that energy on, well, what if I had done this? And what if I
did
had
that
not
on my way over here today?
what if I had gotten divorced? Or
Right.
what if I did
Right.
this? Or what if I noticed that? Like
Right.
that's
I always thought the divorce hurt Cassidy worse than it
Yeah.
hurt Peyton
Yeah.
because he was so little
right.
and she had seen too much.
Right.
But strangely, I mean, it affected them both.
Right,
Don't get me
right,
wrong,
no, don't get
but
me
much
wrong,
more
but-
different manifestations. And I did not, until he was older, realize how much that impacted his life. How much that was trauma. That was an ACE, right? I mean, that was a serious adverse childhood experience for him.
Right.
Serious. So yeah, yeah, it was a lot, Nikki. It was a lot, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
And now how do you maintain those boundaries with him? Because I know he's still struggling.
Yeah,
So
he's
how do
so
you make
much
sure-
better.
how do you-
So in the
Because he's 21.
he'll be 21 in May.
26,
Yeah,
he and
he
you
and
are
I are
the
the
same age,
Right,
yeah.
right. It's not hard now because when he fell apart 2 years ago, and I mean really fell apart to what would have been his freshman year of college. He collapsed at school. He was unconscious for a moment. We had to have an ambulance come and get him. We thought he was having a heart problem because his father has some heart issues.
Right.
We find out that he's having a massive panic attack. And what they came to conclude was that he'd been having them basically nonstop. That his body was unable to shut
The
down.
stress.
Yes,
The
and the
stress.
fear and the
Wow.
worry and the constant pressure. And at that point, he was deep into therapy, right? And thank God, his therapist was like, we need more severe intervention. And I said, I know that. I know that. Like I know what a person who's trying to become sober goes through. And we got him into a program, a day program. We had considered sending him away, but a day program. And that's when the narrative shifted.
Because it's so hard to not feel like you have failed as
Oh
well.
my God, every night. I mean, this poor kid,
Yeah.
6'3",
Yeah.
190 pounds.
And physically looks okay. That's the
and
hard
that
part.
was everybody's problem.
He
What
looks
do you
fine.
mean there's something wrong? I mean, he's this beautiful young man, and he could smile with the best of them and shake hands and look you in the eye, and you'd never know that he was dying on the inside.
Right.
So when it got to the point that he wouldn't leave the house, we couldn't get him to school, he had become anorexic. That's when the severe, interventions came into place, and I knew that I also had to protect myself.
Right.
Because all I wanted to do was save him from this desperate situation
Right.
and the pain he was experiencing. But I know, as a person who's been through a lot, the only way out is through. And for him, he was going to have to go through this. And so I worked hard on me all day while he was in treatment. I would take care of myself. I would do the things. God works in mysterious ways, because treatment started like June 1st, school ended like May 30th. And so, I was able to drive him back and forth to treatment. We would walk in the park after treatment, and I didn't feel the need to have him at my, because we split custody, so he would go back and forth. I did not feel the need to always have him at my house.
Because I can protect you and save you
Right.
here with me.
Because at one point,
nothing bad
I would lay next to him, because his panic was so bad, and they could not find the right combination of meds, that he would shake all night long. And I introduced him to a little bit of mindfulness at that point in time, and the Calm app, where he could either listen to something or listen to music. And then I got to the point where I didn't feel like I needed to do that. And then when he got out of treatment, we went to our favorite place, Sun Valley, Idaho, for 6 weeks. So he could walk and recover and journal and do the things that he had found to be of comfort to him, which were also things that were of comfort to me. And so we could walk and talk, or he could walk by himself, or whatever. And so with him getting better, I found myself desiring more for me too.
And do you think because your energy shift had changed, do you think that helped him as well? Because you sometimes admit this.
I do. I'm intense. Don't ask me.
I love you.
I mean, no. My passion is, my passion gets mistaken sometimes for, slow down. But I mean, you want to give me something to do, and I'm into it. Give me 100-mile-an-hour car, and I'm going. Right. And so going slow is not easy, and going slow, his recovery didn't look like mine, right? And it doesn't need to, and it shouldn't, because it's about him. And he gratefully found out at 19 and 20, instead of me in my late 20s, where a lot of damage had been done. Especially getting into alcohol and other things.
I was going to say, because
he's terrified of
substance
it.
abuse.
Right. And my kids have never seen me drink, because I was sober before they were even in this world. But the tendencies are there. And he knows that anything that's going to take the edge off is dangerous for him. He knows that. He learned that in treatment, and so, my energy is intense. And so practicing mindfulness and meditation for me has helped me learn how to attune myself more, and that when I need to be calm with someone, because that's what benefits them, I can do that now.
Because you can do that with the kids you work with at school.
All the time.
So, but it's so different when it's your own child.
Excuse me, you need to learn this now, and you should be proficient by the end of the week, and you should have all the same glorious experiences that I have, and feel good in your life space. Yeah, right.
Done.
Right. Stamp of approval. What's next? Right. And it's not. It's not the way for me either. I practice. I'm a long-term meditation practitioner, mindfulness practitioner. And there's days when I sit there and all my brain does the entire time is run the list, and other days I'm completely quiet in my head. And but learning the difference is what's important. I think that's what's been great for Peyton is, we talk about our experiences now instead of me telling him what to do. I'm letting his therapist do her job.
Right. Imagine that.
Right. And I have for a long time, because I finally came to understand that the team we had really had Peyton's back.
Right.
And I needed
that you can be a mom.
That I can just be his mom. I don't have to talk about my experiences as a person in recovery, or my experiences as a person who's recovered from long-term anxiety, suffering, and perfectionism.
Now, what about Cassidy? I know you can't speak for her, but was it hard? Was there animosity, or how did she deal with all of the energy you had to put
into him? She was cool about it, because she was at college, so she was very distracted. She's at school, she's swimming, she's getting a pretty heavy degree, and has this, and she's a sorority. She has, she has everything.
So she was busy.
She was a super busy girl, and she studied biopsychology, and now she's in graduate school for clinical psych, neuropsych. So she gets her brother very well, and in fact, a couple times would check me and be like, "Mom, this is his recovery, his process. You need to slow down." And I'm grateful, that she could see that. She desperately loves her brother. She desperately hates what he's going through. and at times I think her heart for him is so huge. She's very protective of him and his process. And so it's interesting because, you know, as I sit here and tear up, it's, I think, what's also guided some of her choices as a neuropsychologist, is what she's becoming, is that what happens to people's brains? Why is Peyton's brain so different from mine?
Right.
You know, and
Oh,
what,
absolutely.
you know, and what neurotransmitters did he not get that I've got?
How did I get?
Right, and why are his
Good deal.
Right, and she struggles.
Right,
She struggles
right.
with anxiety and depression too a little
Yeah.
bit. Not like what he's.
To that level.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, my poor kids are wired for this. I mean, their genetic trees on both sides for this stuff, not so hot.
Yeah, but
You
there's
know,
good stuff too.
But there's so
you know,
much good
and
stuff.
it's one where, you know, everybody, you know, kind of has their peak and their recovery.
Absolutely.
You know, so I mean, at some point, as much as he's going through this now, we know his brain's not gonna mature for
6 more years
Right,
at least.
right,
I mean,
right.
I love that because it's a good excuse for some of the stupid stuff I did. You know, but working with
Exactly.
kids in the way I have, and working with kids primarily my whole career that have spent their lives, you know, in adverse childhood experiences and societal impacts, adverse societal impacts, you know, their brains are affected. And I can look at that now, you know, as a practitioner go, I get it.
Right.
And now I know what to do to help you.
Right.
You know, and I don't have to live in your skin and be codependent, if you will. I can help you build some skills and strategies. And that's, for Peyton, what it's become all about. And he has developed all these amazing adaptive coping skills versus the maladaptive ones that he was coming into. You know, and I learned from him.
Right.
Like, I'm looking at him and I'm going, wow, dude, you're going to be, and I told him that, I said, someday, you are going to be such a witness for someone else. Because he thinks he wants to go into social work. He doesn't know what he wants to do, and it's none of my business.
Yeah, what did I say? People would always ask me, what's Eli going to do? I'm like, I have no idea.
Right.
But he's going to be
And
really, really
that's-
good at it.
You know, and when you told me that, I was like,
Yes.
because when people ask me, well, what's Peyton doing now? Because
Yeah.
they all know what Catherine's
That's
doing.
such a
Because
hard
it
question.
is hard because, you know, the perfectionist in me, the perfect mom wants to go, well, he's in school, he's doing this, and he's doing that, and he's doing that, and we're so proud.
Right.
But the thing is, he's not doing that right now because, you know what? It would be the worst possible thing for him to be doing right now. He is recovering, he is getting strong, he is learning how to function in the world with the few strikes against him that he has, and he's not fighting them anymore. He's accepting them and working through them. And all I really care about, Nikki, is that he is happy and that he is healthy and he is his own version of a productive member of society, whatever that looks like. I don't care if he goes and becomes a pipe fitter.
I always
don't
care. You know what? Garbage man, delivery man. I told my kids, I really don't care what you do. I just want you to be happy doing it and have some functional role in society.
Absolutely. And so he's working on that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what he wants. And who does? I mean, when I went to college at 18, oh my God, I was going to be a civil engineer. And then I'm like, there's math in engineering?
Well, that
oh
sucks.
no, going to be changing. And then I went all the way, but I mean, even when I
nobody really knows. I mean, I'm one of the odd ones that kind of
do.
But no, I agree with you. And the brains, they just don't mature. So we just need to give him his time.
He needs his space. He'll figure it out. And he doesn't need me telling him, you should. That's the worst thing, is to tell somebody what they should be doing.
Backseat drivers.
And it's, you know, it's kind of like my friend Elizabeth Gilbert. She's really not my friend.
Right. I was like, is she your friend?
I've met her twice, and I like to believe she's my friend. And she actually pulled me aside and talked to me when I told her how the book saved my life. She pulled me around the table and said, tell me your story. And I did, and she hugged me and she said, I love you and I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, Gilbert's proud of me. I will be okay, right? I will forever be okay. But you know, the beautiful part of all this is, Nikki, is that we just keep going, you know, and we just love them until they can love themselves.
Right.
And see that they're not full of shame and they're not defective and they're not rotten, you know.
And it's important because I hope, I don't know, we always, on here, I'm just like, just speak your truth and hopefully somebody, gets something out of it. And I think we never really know what people's experiences have been when we meet them. And it's really interesting when people make a comment or, well, I saw so-and-so, they didn't even look me in the eye, and they did this, and blah, blah, and we get all judgy. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I've kind of know what happened to them, and I know why they didn't do that. So I really hope people take that pause to maybe not have that judgment and have some understanding of people's experiences.
And you know, you brought up a really important point, because you know me, the mindful girl. Practicing that pause between the stimulus and the response. You know, we see someone and we judge, you know, but we don't have a clue necessarily.
What their day has been like.
Right. We don't know anything about what might be happening in their personal life. And instead just stopping, and it's kind of like what I'm doing at schools. So I'm trying to shift that narrative from what is wrong with that kid to what has happened to this second grader who's throwing tables. That is not a normal reaction to someone asking you to stop doing something. Just like someone not looking you in the eye, who knows what they're living.
It's not about you. I always say it's not about you.
It's never about us.
It's never about you.
That's the hardest thing for all of us to embody is, you know, I got so anxious about doing this with you when you first asked me, like, yeah, this is going to be great. And then the more time at lunch, I'm like, I'm not worthy of this conversation. Nobody needs to hear this. Nobody cares. And then my, you know, beloved says to me, it doesn't matter what you think, Gail. What other people think about you is none of your business. And I'm like, God,
you can't own that. You cannot
exactly.
own that.
And because that's part of the reason I struggled in the beginning with Peyton was I was so worried about what other people were going to think about this.
And that's the hard part, because I know just with what I do, just as a physician, that is one of the hardest part to try to get parents to understand, because a lot of it is well, what will people think if they're not in school? What will people think if they're at the partial program? What will people think if my kid is on Zola or whatever? I'm just picking that.
All of the above.
Yeah, exactly. and I really have to have those conversations. Like, we can't really care what people think. We've got to concentrate on what is going to be best for your child and
in this moment.
And even for adults too. So.
It's really true. I had to have a hard conversation with a parent at school the other day whose child was in a literal mental health crisis. And the father was so stressed. I got to get back to work. I literally put my hand on his and I said, sir, your child needs you right now. What do I need to do to help your work understand what's going on?
I'll do it.
Because I'll do it. Because I need to be that partner for you in a school. And you know, just to circle back a little bit to our original conversation about making sure that people understand this isn't like pointing fingers at schools and things. This is why we have to help build a capacity for understanding. Mental illness does not have a look. It does not have a set of circumstances. It does not have that kid, Peyton Neely, walking around in the halls of his high school. That's what everybody said to me. You'd never know. That's right. So you have to trust when the adults working with him tell you this, and you have to be willing to at least listen and see him for who he is instead of what he appears to be. And that goes for everybody. Appearances are a bunch of crap, right? I mean, it really is. We seek validation, we want validation, and then we get the validation, right? But the bottom line is we all are just who we are, and we're all just doing the best we can every single day. And some days are easier than others.
Yeah, some days really suck.
Some days do. They do. You're right.
No, they do. And I think for everybody.
And I bet you find parents alone, feeling very alone in that, especially when you're treating kids who are struggling with something, right? And their parents just feel like abject failures. And the thing is, the more I learn from my brilliant daughter, there is so much to do with the brain that we have zero control over. And some that we do. So we work on the things that we can. And we accept the things that we can't.
Pray for the things that we can't.
Look up the Serenity Prayer if you don't know it, because it sure helped me through the journey, you know. And the good news is, there's always hope on the other side of everything. Always.
Yeah, and actually I'll give a shout out to my boy.
Do.
Because I mean, total same story.
God.
Like, let's see,
So,
we did.
I could cry thinking about this.
What did we do? Mood disorder, behavior, oppositional, defiant. Oh my God, that was something.
Yeah,
we
that's
were
a thing.
Oh my God, we were in residential treatment for 12 months maybe, and just struggle. In and out of Lincoln Land, quit jobs. It was just like, oh, are we ever going to make it? And he is finally, I think, somewhat it's clicked as he's gotten older, and you know, on the dean's list at SIUE. In Edwardsville, and got accepted to this program at Gail for summer. I mean, so I always tell people there is hope. Like you said, you have to
Could
get.
you ever envision that for him? I mean,
No.
seriously.
Do you know how many people told me he was going to be in jail?
Oh, yes.
Or drugs,
yes,
or
yes,
in
yes.
the juvie system.
Yeah.
But you're right. You have to just get through it, and then once you get through it, it just.
And we don't get to know what the end journey.
No.
And it's not even the end; it's a journey, right? So we don't get to know even for ourselves.
Right.
We just have to show up.
Yep.
Do the next right thing, and look at your beautiful boy. And you see, your story gives my story so much hope. Like, my timing for Peyton is my timing.
Right,
It's
it's
not
not
his,
his.
right? And in fact, Cassidy checked me hard on it because I said,
Right.
well, da-da-da-da-da. And she looked at me and she goes, this isn't about you, Mom. She said, he's not ready.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, she goes, you gotta stop wanting him to be ready. And I was like, dang, kiddo, you're so right. Dang it. I made you so wise at 24, and I was such a train wreck at 24, right? So somewhere along the line, we've done something right, right? And we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because that day in the bathroom at that conference when we just...
Oh my gosh, we were like...
But I mean, there was nothing but the universe going, here you go, mamas. Too bad we didn't see each other along the way.
Well,
But we had support.
we made it in the right time.
Right. That's what's awesome.
So prayers for Peyton.
Oh, thank you. I mean, he, in my opinion, is doing so well. I mean, we're so far from where we were. It seems like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's high functioning. I mean, he leaves the house, he goes places, he does things, he has friends, you know? He has a life that's not what it was 2 years ago.
And not where it's going to be. It's
And I
going to
do,
be even...
no, and I don't know where it's going. And
Yeah.
I don't get to be the judge and jury on that. I just need to sit back, and I am in awe of him because he could have given up.
Right.
He could have taken his life.
Right.
He could have said no. When we sat on the steps at his dad's house, his dad and I, and said, dude, here's a suggestion. And I got to give a shout out to Memorial Behavioral Health because I don't know what we would have done without them. And I know there's no commercial here.
Right.
It's just the honest to God truth of some incredible people who had Peyton's absolute best interest in mind. And we said, we need more help than you're getting. And he looked at me and he said, I know, Mom, what's next? And that was it. It's surrender. It's I give up. I can't do this. I need help.
Right.
And that was it. And so if that's something you struggle with, you know, that willingness to just step into the unknown and go, okay, I can't do this by myself anymore.
So when people see you, they need to first off ask about both kids, not just one.
Right.
I always do.
You say that for yourself, right?
I have two children, and I'm like, I have 2 kids.
Right.
Ask about both kids.
Right.
And I think it's okay to just like, you know what, they're thriving. We don't need to know the details.
Right.
You know what? My
Because
kids are
that's
thriving.
competition and perfection. Right. It just feeds that
My
stuff.
kids are thriving.
How are your kids? They are amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing and they're thriving.
Yeah, I love that.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Thank
sister.
you, Gail.
Oh no, thank you.
That was awesome.
You're amazing.
All right, prayers for Peyton, people.
Prayers for everybody.
For everybody. No, you're right.
Anybody who's
Prayers.
struggling, right?
Prayers for
Everybody.
everybody.
Oh man, that's awesome,
Good
sister.
Lord.
No, that was awesome.